right, hello everyone. I'm Wolfman Sam here with my partner Johnny Buff Guns, and
Hello?
we are Creatures
Creatures
of
of
the
the
Night.
Night.
Today we're going to be diving head first into the original Nightmare on Elm Street movie series. We're going to talk about all 8 of them. So sit back, relax. It's going to be a long one, folks. We're going to be talking about Freddy and all the victims, everybody. So with that said, I'm gonna just kind of go through the first one. We'll talk about the first one first, the '84 classic with Robert Englund, and also for those of you that are unfamiliar with any of the movies, if you've not seen any of the movies, go watch them. Because they will be spoilers. We're going through the entire movie series. So just before we kind of dig into this, I'm just gonna let you know, watch them all, find them all, come back to this podcast because this is going to be, not to sound pretentious, but this is going to be for fans who have already seen
Yes.
the movies.
Yes.
But yeah, the first one. John, you want to start us off with the first one?
Oh yeah. Anyway, the first Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, it's a classic. I love it. It's one of my favorite horror movies, and like every person before seeing the film, I know who Freddy Krueger was just by seeing a picture of him and understanding the concept how he kills you in your dreams. And when I first heard that concept as a kid, I'm like, I don't want to watch this movie as a kid. That's scary. And then I didn't see the film until I was 17.
I'm going to add, not to interrupt you.
That's okay.
To make it a little bit more scary, a little behind the scenes for you. The Freddy character was not only inspired by a man who Wes had sawn as a kid with a hat, but it was actually inspired by a news article that Wes Craven had read about kids in Cambodia dying in their sleep and literally saying, a man is coming to get me. So it is based off of some form of news article.
Yes. Basically, when Wes Craven was making Nightmare on Elm Street, he was basically reading that article as inspiration for where he could think of this concept of working as a horror movie of dying in your sleep and not waking up again.
Yeah.
And of course, Robert Englund, he's iconic, he's scary, he's frightening, and he's sadistic.
This film really put Robert on the map.
Yes, it did. And actually, what's interesting, before they casted Robert Englund as Freddy, they wanted a stuntman, but when they were going through the casting process, they're like, yeah, these stuntmen are just not acting as well. We got to get a real trained professional actor who can really act the part. And they originally wanted David Warner originally. He went through the makeup process, but once they saw Robert Englund, they're like, yeah, this is our Freddy right here.
Right. Yeah. Right, exactly. And, I want to touch upon that this for the Johnny Depp fans, this is Johnny Depp's first. Very first movie.
Before I even saw this film, I knew about it from reading about it. My dad told me this was Johnny Depp's first film and his breakout at the time. Well, it's one of his first films. I mean, it's not that he's bad. It's not like one of his. He wasn't like.
No, he's decent. He's decent.
Yeah, decent, not bad. Just it was his first film. It's not one of his special roles. It wasn't an Academy Award film for sure.
No. But yeah, this was the first film. It's really put the lead star Heather Langenkamp.
Yes.
As well, Nancy Thompson, for those of you that don't know. And what could be said about Nightmare on Elm Street that hasn't been said already? The atmosphere, the just that dreamlike quality that's just unmatched. The special effects alone, how they did Tina's death by using a revolving room, just for a little behind the scenes. They literally had the room put upside down to get that effect.
Right.
So when you see that scene of Tina on the wall, she's actually on the floor.
Yeah.
But movie magic.
When I first saw that movie, that scene, I was really spooked out from that. That and all.
Yeah. Up to that point, I had seen it. I talk about my love for Nightmare on Elm Street. I had seen it when I was 14. Right. And up to that point, it was probably the most bloodiest thing I'd ever seen. And I know it's been topped. I know. But, it's one of those iconic films, and it's to this day rewatching it. I can't believe how smartly written it is.
Yeah, it is.
Even to today's standards, it's just the Nancy character is incredibly smart.
Yes.
She literally reads traps and on traps and tries to formulate a plan on how to pull Freddy out of the ring. And because she goes from, okay, who is this guy? Haunting my dreams. And there's a whole drama with the mom, and it's revealed that the mom was one of the people that burned him alive.
Yeah.
And and the reason why Freddy's come back is to seek revenge on the kids of Elm Street.
Right. Well, it's interesting how because Freddy was guilty of his crime, but then those past sins catch up to the family, and it's also even though he was a piece of garbage, but the question is, was killing the answer? It's sort of complicated question and situation.
Right. And he was, don't get me wrong, he was a child killer. They talk
he was. He was a bastard.
Brutally killed child and children. And it's always kind of alluded. Also, I just want to add that he might have done some other things with children in the series, but they're here or there. That's just theory.
Right.
John, is there anything you want to add about the first one?
One thing I'd like to add about this is how, you said, what has not been done, said and done about this film. Well, one thing it touches upon is reverse parenting. When when Nancy's getting ready to stop Freddy, she basically puts her mom to death. That's basically looked at as how in life that you're going to be reverse parenting when your parents are older. You're going to be acting like a parent to your parents at some point in life.
I guess, yeah. And the actors and actresses that played those roles, John Saxton, who played the father. I forget the actress who played the mother.
I forget her name too, but I'll edit that.
She was awesome as well. The cast for the first movie is nothing to shrug at.
No, it's very well done. It's very good, and it's very believable. Especially how you root for Nancy throughout the entire film. No one believes her about Freddy Krueger. You want her to her point.
She's written to where it doesn't necessarily feel like reading a script. Which is rare. It's rare to see that.
She's one of the best.
That's just Wes Craven in a nutshell. But you were saying, I'm sorry.
She's one of the best final girls along up there with Laurie Strode and or Sidney Prescott.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, she's great at in this movie, Heather Langenkamp, and let me see what else I'd like to touch upon with this.
Just looking through his notes.
It also touches upon loss of innocence too, of how whether that's as children we're born innocent, but then as we get older we lose our innocence.
Yeah, in a way. Yeah,
a little bit.
I can see that.
Right, especially how
and of course, it's kind of the ghost story. It's kind of it's the traditional ghost story. But like I said, the atmosphere is unmatched to this day. It's one of the reasons why. Also, I'm a champion of practical effects. As we get through these series, I will have to touch upon Mr. Mad George, one of the makeup artists for the Elm Street movies. His special effects is just unmatched, and I know I'm forgetting a few. I don't really know all the names of the makeup artists, but to all the makeup artists that worked on the originals, thank you very much. You have really nothing against CGI, like we always say, but it's really a testament into why practical effects are so much.
And also, this was a very an original slasher film for the time, because after Halloween, everyone was mimicking Halloween.
Everyone was doing sort of the Jason Halloween formula.
Yes, they were, but this
it was less supernatural and more a killer's coming to your house and stuff like that. And Freddy went not only with the supernatural element, but he gave the killer personality.
Yes,
he
talks.
Not just talks, but taunts, and he he, as we'll talk about, he really steps into the psychological characters and really
Yeah,
psychologically messes with our heroes
that's
as the
true.
movie series goes on, because he'll tap into their deepest, darkest fears, and
Right.
he'll make those fears a reality, as we'll get into.
Right. That's a good point. It's kind of like a little bit like Stephen King's It to some degree.
Yeah, it's
Somewhat. Somewhat.
somewhat,
Yeah.
somewhat.
Yeah.
It's sort of like if it was part of your dreams and
Right.
more
That's a good
personal,
point.
and it's yeah, that would be a great analogy.
Right. Right. Because everyone's got fear. Everyone who like we're all human beings. Everyone's in fear of
Absolutely.
something. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think that's what makes Freddy so terrifying. Is much like it, Stephen King's It, or Pennywise, if you prefer. He taps into what you're afraid of. He knows what you're afraid of.
Right.
You know,
Right. Right. Also, I don't know if you know this, when Nancy's in the hospital, like, doing tests on her, believe it or not, that doctor is Charles Fletcher, who played the voice of Roger Rabbit.
oh, I didn't know that.
Meaning, I never would have guessed that when I first
Did
saw
not
this
know
movie,
that.
that
Fun
was
fact for all you.
Roger Rabbit as the doctor who's testing Nancy's dreams.
Yeah. Fun fact also, for all you young Frankenstein fans, Robert England is the son of Cloris Leachman, Frau Brucke.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Oh, really?
yes, sir. So a little connection.
Interesting.
You learn something new every day, but
That's true. Yeah, that's very, very true.
yes, Cloris Leachman, Frau Brucke from Young Frankenstein is Freddy Krueger's mother. And yeah.
Yeah, the other funny thing is, I'm not gonna lie, like before, like I've actually had dreams about Freddy Krueger because again, this movie can really make you scared of like going to sleep.
Yeah, and I have no shame in discussing that before I watched this movie when I was 14 years old, I was deathly afraid of horror films.
Same.
Deathly afraid, like I'm full on screaming, "Don't make me watch it," kind of.
Right.
And that was before I was into horror films, but I've always been into monsters ever since I was a kid.
Right. Well, one exception for me
It wasn't long before I turned 14 and I faced my failures, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
I've been a horror fan for at least let's see, I'm 29 now, so you do the math.
Well, I'm 30. I've been a horror fan for 15 years, since 2000.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Also, what do you think of like the scene when Nancy's in the hallway and she sees her friend Tina in the hallway?
Well, that taps into psychological stuff.
Right.
It's always
Guilt and grief.
yeah, and he always plays on that.
Right.
I always loved the line, Nancy, where's your whole pass? And
Right.
they make reference to that line later on in the movie, later on in the series of movies. The screw your pass.
Yeah.
And yes. I always loved the line, "Hey Nancy, no running in the hallway."
Right. In some way, there's a little bit of humor right there. We're not as over the top like in the late.
Yeah, there's an element. There's always been an element of dark humor.
Yeah, but
as the movie series goes on, it gets goofier and goofier until the point where it's a lot of fun.
Right.
It kind of loses its horror element.
Right.
But kind of sort of still keeping it in a way.
Right.
But, anyway.
If you've never seen this movie before, you'll recognize this telephone photo from memes on the internet where Nancy tries to call her boyfriend Glenn to tell him not to go to sleep. Then Freddy answers the phone saying, "I'm your new boyfriend now, Nancy." With the recent event with Johnny Depp and his ex-wife Amber Heard, there's a meme where it says, "Whatever you do, don't marry Amber Heard." What do you think of John Saxon's character as Nancy?
I love John. I think he's definitely the perfect father figure, and kind of sort of, I wouldn't say foil, but definitely a nice little companion.
Yeah, he is.
to Nancy's kind
Sometimes I,
of super smart.
yeah, but sometimes I found her mother kind of like bitchy sometimes, especially she was an alcoholic.
Well, yeah. It alludes that she's an alcoholic, and that's because of what she did to Freddy Krueger
Right.
years ago.
True.
And if you really pay attention, she constantly wants to protect Nancy.
True.
Constantly.
True.
And it comes off, she's not really so much bitchy. She's just so terrified of what Freddy's
True.
done, and
But
she
that's
really wants to
every
protect her
again.
kid.
We're
And
not we're not parents,
unfortunately,
but
she's an alcoholic. So, and she gives up the alcohol towards the end.
yeah. Well,
But unfortunately, towards the end of the movie, Freddy
yeah.
takes her and so on and so forth.
Right. Actually, originally Wes Craven was forced by the studio to like use like a cliffhanger ending, but he wanted this film to be a one-time film, no sequel or
You could see that. You
franchises.
could see that from the cliffhanger ending that this
Yes,
is really meant to be a
a
one
one movie.
one-off.
Yeah, the
Which
other thing,
I'm glad it wasn't, because we'll talk about the sequel.
right? It's I actually have seen the alternate ending on YouTube. It's interesting, but it's like okay, this could go either way depending on how like you want to see this. Like, do you want it just to be like a one-time film where it ends happily, or a cliffhanger ending setting up for a sequel where Freddy's still out there and he's still killing you in your dreams?
I've always liked the ending that we've got in theaters and
Yeah, yeah,
the cliffhanger ending.
right. Same.
That's iconic in its own right.
True, true, and I also
Um,
like how it was almost like on the ending where was this real? Was this all a dream? Kind of like Doctor Cat and
right,
Doctor
right, and
Pally
it
on the dream.
plays on that theme.
Right.
I personally think of it kind of being too happy and it being, him being gone for good. It
Yeah.
kind of loses its theme of, is this a dream?
Right.
That kind of thing. Like, whatever.
Because when I was
Um,
rewatching it for this retrospect, I'm thinking to myself, I never thought of it that way. Was this real? Was it all a dream? Was it all in their head? Was it just all like a dream the whole entire time?
right, right.
But
Okay.
I thought when you think about it, when Freddy like pops up and grabs Nancy's mom, like okay, this basically is real. It was real.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Is there anything you want to add about number one?
Yes, I do actually.
New
This
Line.
saved New Line Cinema from because they were almost on the verge of bankruptcy and they thought this film was a failure. This could have ruined probably New Line Cinema would not be around today because of Nightmare on Elm Street.
Thank you, Freddie.
Yes,
Freddie, for saying New Line, because I had no
pretty
idea about
much.
that myself.
With The Nightmare on Elm Street saving New Line Cinema from bankruptcy, it's similar how like Universal with Dracula saving Universal Studios from bankruptcy. It's true they say history does repeat itself.
Yeah, because when this movie was being made, Robert Shea, the producer of this film, loved this script, so he basically like put his like money and effort and wanted this film to be made. He sold his house, and he basically really like wanted this film to be a hit, knowing it was going to work, and he was right.
I guess it's true what they say about New Line, which is it's the house that Freddie built.
Pretty much, yeah. Good point.
I forget where I heard that. I think it was on like an MTV podcast,
Right,
an MTV kind of segment with Robert England.
right, right. Yeah, right, right. And also,
We will talk about the rock and roll connection, the heavy metal connection as a
but
series.
the funny part is, if they had like went with the happy ending, would we have not had Freddy versus Jason?
Absolutely. Well, for better or for worse, as we'll get to that.
Right.
All right. Is there anything else you want to add about number one?
Yes, there is actually. Let's see. Oh yeah, this is something I learned from my friend Christian, who loves Nightmare on Elm Street and a big Freddy Krueger fan. That apparently there's an Indian Bollywood movie called Mahagal. I'm not sure I'm saying it right. I apologize.
Oh yes, the Indian ripoff of
Yes.
Nightmare on Elm Street. I am actually familiar.
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. But I can't make a comment. But it's interesting how, again, because this movie's so iconic, everybody wanted to rip it off.
Everybody in there, even if you follow professional wrestling, right?
Right.
There are indie wrestlers that come out as Freddy Krueger with the glove, for better or for worse.
Right.
Right? Like, we could be for days and days and days talking about the iconic status of Mr. Krueger.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll be here forever.
We will be here forever. We'll be old men.
We basically Freddy haunting us in our dream to like
Make more reviews.
Yeah, and apparently there was an Indonesian film called Satan's Bed from '86. Again, never saw, but interesting.
Yeah.
And there's a porn version called Wet Dream on Elm Street.
Oh boy.
Oh my god.
If it exists. Yeah.
Yeah. And Freddy's so iconic. Toys, merchandising, and the first Scream film, the janitor was dressed as Freddy Krueger with Wes Craven.
Yeah, even by today's standards, it's still talked about.
Yeah,
it's still.
And the recent season of Stranger Things had a Nightmare on Elm Street like similarity elements.
Robert Englund had a cameo in one of the episodes of Stranger Things season 4.
Terrifier 2 took inspiration.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
The list goes on and on.
On and on. But with that said, you want to move on to number 2?
Yes, let's move on. I basically got out of my system of if there's anything I miss, I'll just edit it like recording my voice.
Absolutely,
let's go on
absolutely.
Yes.
The one last thing I want to say about Nightmare on Elm Street is that this is Wes Craven's masterpiece, and may he rest in peace. He's one of the best horror filmmakers ever.